in the latter half of the account, Poets and Pancakes, Sukamitran talks of his own literary inclinations, and he makes a very important point, and important from examination point of view, that a writer such as he was, of the kind that he was, and generally speaking, should have a certain number of attributes in order to be successful and in order to be able to face failures. So according to him, the writing, especially for newspapers, is a drudgery, and in order to have a semblance of success, a writer must be patient, persevering, and persistent. He gives an example to prove that how this drudgery is an indispensable part of a writer, and he must not get discouraged by, a writer that is, must not get discouraged by repeated failures in the form of rejection slips that he receives from the newspapers. And his writing interests takes him into a library because of the fact that he sees an advertisement inviting promising authors to write, to take part in a writing competition, and this particular writing competition has been organized by a certain publication company in the United Kingdom. So he goes in search of finding out more about this particular publication in one of the libraries in Madras at that particular point in time, and he does come across certain material. And what the important thing about this particular find is regarding this particular publication, which had floated an advertisement regarding that writing contest, was that its editor happened to be Stephen Spender, no other person than Stephen Spender. And once again he recalls the English poet that had paid visit to the Gemini studios, and reassured and recharged, he sends his write-up to the magazine, whose editor was Stephen Spender, the same poet who had visited Gemini Studios. Fine. Having sent his piece, he forgets about the contest, and the narrative rolls on, and after retiring from the Gemini Studios, he recalls how one day he was strolling on the streets of Madras, where he came across a roadside bookseller, and he happened to pick up one book, which was the name of that particular book was The God That Failed. The God That Failed. And when he checked the contents of this particular book, he was once again surprised that this particular book was a compilation of essays. Was a compilation of essays written by renowned academicians from across the world, and one of the authors of the essay in this particular book, The God That Failed, was Stephen Spender. And when he browses the contents, he comes to know that the book was about how people had been initially been enamored of communism had actually ended up getting disillusioned of this particular fact, of this particular form of governance. Fine. So the God that failed so communism happens to be the God that failed in the text. So this particular account about the life and style of living of people working in Gemini Studios, which is titled Poets and Pancakes, actually recounts the early days of movie making in India, and it talks of one particular studios, that is Gemini Studios, which is housed in one of the Governor General stables, one of the British Governor General stables. So these facts that I've given you have to be supplemented and complemented by reading the texts word for word, and only then what I've basically taken you through is the important landmarks of the lesson, and